Welcome to People Love Process. I've said this before many times in both my courses I teach on LinkedIn Learning and in various talks I've given at conferences to other creatives. Client work is great, but the best way to develop your skills is to have your own personal projects. Now, this whole movie is going to be based on just that, a personal project of mine. Creative exploration, be it design, illustration, or in this movie's case, a little bit of both, will help you improve your vector building skills and pursue ideas that no client will probably ever hire you to do otherwise. But if you create it on your own, then show it, they very well could. That's why they're so great to work on. And it's going to improve your ability to think and come up with ideas as well. So in this movie, I'm going to take you through how I approached an idea from the moment of inspiration to the final artwork used in several contexts. So let's jump right into it. So why the volcano? Well, I grew up in the Pacific Northwest, Washington State, and on May 18th, 1980 is when Mount St. Helens erupted. That's the photo shown here. And I remember climbing up on the roof with the ladder with my dad. We went up on top of our roof and stood there for well over an hour just watching this plume go up into the sky because we only lived about 45 miles away from Mount St. Helens. So it was like having a front row seat to the eruption. It was kind of cool. Within a day, it was like total darkness the next day, almost the whole day, because of all the ash coming down everywhere. It was pretty nuts, but it was a pretty major event when I was growing up when this happened. So this ultimately is the inspiration. Well, how could that be an inspiration for what you're doing now? Well, it didn't become an inspiration until a few years back. The actual direct source of inspiration was REI is an outdoor kind of sportswear company that was founded in the Pacific Northwest. I believe it was founded in Seattle, but they sell camping supplies and hiking supplies, anything outdoor related, sportswear wise or equipment wise, you can get it there. Well, they had a podcast I found on Apple Podcast, and it was called Camp Monsters. And I go, what's this about? Well, it's about scary camp stories. That's what it's about. And it kind of goes with their genre of supporting that kind of lifestyle and camping in general and everything that goes with it. So I started listening to this. And one of the camp stories they talked about was a mythology that came about after Mount St. Helens exploded. Now, I was used to mythology from the Pacific Northwest growing up because I heard all of it. That's kind of the area where Bigfoot started. So I was totally into Bigfoot. I thought that was fun. But this is regarding Bigfoot. The camp story, as it goes in the camp story, that when Mount St. Helens blew up, that there must have been a Bigfoot on Mount St. Helens, and there must have been a bat, and somehow it fused them together, and it created what this camp story called Bat Squatch. And you can see a little artwork right here. They did all the scratch board for each of the episodes, and this one was the Bat Squatch one. And I go, okay, that's kind of cool. I'd never heard that. I love that kind of mythology. So I decided I have to create that. There's just no way around it. It's right in the area I grew up. It's like I feel obligated to jump on that idea. So how do you start in terms of getting real world reference for something that's mythological? Well, Bigfoot, Sasquatch, another name for it, I think that is derived from the Indian name for Bigfoot, Sasquatch, is basically a primate type entity. So I just started looking at gorillas and, of course, a bat, since a bat's part of this mythology now. And there's certain aspects of a bat I want to pick up on, mainly the ears, Bigfoot himself, Sasquatch, I'm going to play off of a gorilla in this case. But if you look at their nose, a gorilla's nose is pretty flat, just wide. Well, a bat's nose is almost structured the same way. It's pretty flat. It's just a little narrower. So those kind of tie them together. The ears will put on our Bigfoot type face. And of course, I want him to be screaming. So I have I have references of gorillas either yawning or actually roaring or whatever. And this was all the reference I used to draw from. And this is where drawing kicks in, where I just start sitting down and drawing out the bat. I'm trying different versions of the mouth, trying to get the shapes to look correct. And I'm kind of liking it at this point. And it's usually at this point, I'll take a shot and I'll post on like Instagram. And I usually get some feedback. And the feedback I got on this was somebody says, well, the ear on his right side, this one looks like it's kind of coming off the side of his head. And I agreed. I thought, you're right, that doesn't look right. So I went back and I redrew it. Now, I love using these mono pencils. I also use Blackwing pencils, but Tombow makes great pencils. I use mono erasers, white erasers. I don't like the pink ones because they actually leave some pigment behind, I've noticed. And these are actually the pair of glasses. I have a different pair of glasses for when I draw because I like getting close to the paper. And that's what, I use for that. Now, if you've ever wondered, well, what kind of tracing paper are you using here? Well, it's actually not a tracing paper. It works like tracing paper. This is my light pad that I can illuminate from behind, so I can put layers over it. Now, I should just point out, I prefer working in analog. If you want to do this all digitally, you can. There's no problem. My daughter does everything on her iPad Pro. I just prefer tactile. This is the way I learned. It's the way I love to do it. And if you've ever wondered what specific brand of paper I use or what kind of pencils or erasers I use, well, I created a page on my website and it's tied to this domain, just peopleof.com. That'll take you to the page on my website. And I have a list of all the physical materials I use and all the devices I use, such as a flatbed scanner. But this is we'll show you everything I use to draw out things and compose things, everything from my pencils to the pens I prefer, to the mechanical pencil, which I'm going to show you here pretty soon. But you can see I redrew the ear, and then it's at this point that I'm going to take these drawings. I also thought the mouth looked a little wonky over here. It was too kind of squared off, and this chin wasn't looking correct. I decided I need to just get rid of all that and redraw the mouth. So that's what this part's over here. But this is where a flatbed scanner comes in. One of the devices I think is key for the creative process. So I use this to scan all those elements in, and then in Photoshop, I just kind of combine them together. So I have a nice tight rough here. It's not my final drawing because I tend to set this aside, focus on something else, come back to it, look at it, and decide, okay, I'm going to redraw this again, and I'm going to do a more refined sketch and perfect these forms. I think at the top of his head here, it's looking a little weird how this kind of goes here, then goes back up, then comes down. I think that can be improved. And other shape and form. This is where I really focus on the shape and form, thinking what I want it to be before I move into vector. And so I do a refined drawing, and I always use a mechanical pencil for that so I can get the lines nice and thin. And I just focus on the shapes and just perfecting the shapes at this stage. So when I move to vector, it just becomes a roadmap that I can build upon. And you can see on this one, I decided to change the direction of the ear to kind of mimic the one on this side. And I like that better than this swinging back. And it's just paying attention to those details. I thought I was cutting up too far on the chin here, so I brought it down a bit. And it's those kind of decisions I make at this point and perfect it. You can see this little area here where it just came to a corner and came down, and it made it look better if I brought that little notch up. So it's all those little details I pay attention at this point, and I just work all those out into my refined sketch. Once I have it all finalized, again, I go back to a flatbed scanner, scan it in, place it into Illustrator like this, and all I'm going to do with this is I'm going to adjust the opacity to like 20 to 15%, lock this layer, and this is the layer I'm going to start building upon. And once again, It's really easy if you take the time to figure out your shape and form in a drawn stage before you ever get to vector, because once you get to vector, you can just use it if you take the time to do it outside the box, is what I like to say. It's going to make vector building a lot easier. Then you can think in shapes. This eye could just be part of a circle. I have two shapes. I can just take them. I can go to the Pathfinder minus front. I can take these two shapes minus front just to get those elements on the eyes. Now, if I want to build, we'll go ahead and build this inner part of the nose, because this is one case where it's very has a lot of curves, which means we're going to be using Bezier curves for that. If I select these and we go to the strokes, you can see these are 0.75. When I build at this size, this is pretty fat, so I'm going to go down to 0.25 because it's easier, and we'll switch to the pen tool. Wherever it comes to a point, gets a point. That's an easy one to discern. And then as it goes around here, I think we can form this first curve with a Bezier curve. So we're going to go right to about what would be a tangent right here, and we'll just pull out the handle. I don't try to form the full curve right away. I'll just pull it out like that. Then I'll go down to the tip of the nose, kind of find the tangent area as close as I can, and I pull that out enough to get access to those handles later. I'll go here. I'll do the same approach. Where it comes to a point, gets a point. That's an easy one to discern. This is a long curve to go all the way up here. So we'd want to put one right about here, which if you think like a clock, using that clockwork method I've talked about in a few other movies, this would be at a 3 o'clock. Pull it out just enough to get access to the handles. You don't have to figure out the full curve. Comes to the top tangent. We'll go ahead and pull that out like this. Come down to the this part and pull that out. Go back up here. Go ahead and pull that out once again as it gets to the side. I think we need one there, and then we'll close the shape. So this would be the rough build, if you will. Now, you can use the anchor point tool here to grab a path like this and bend it. But notice how it adjusts the next anchor point to the left. This is why I really don't like how they make it. You can't control that. You can't say, don't do that. Just focus on this segment I'm on. No, you can't. So I like almost never use it to do that type of thing. I'll go to Astute Graphics plugin called Vector Scribe, and I'll use Path Scribe, because what it does, as soon as I select it, notice these nodes turn on. These are called ghost handles, and this allows you to do the same thing without affecting this other anchor point you already have placed. So I can grab this, this ghost handle and just pull it out. That's why having plugins are so critical, because it'll improve your vector building. It'll make the process easier. You don't have to go back and fix something because the way Adobe implemented it is kind of half-assed and doesn't work as great. That's why you want to use plugins. It's just going to save you time, which is going to save you money. And here's where I'll just focus on each anchor, and then I'll just finesse it to pull out those curves like this. I'll go here. I'll finesse this. I might pull this one in a little more. I might adjust the angle. And this is where you might want to turn off Smart Guides, Command U, so it doesn't try snapping at certain angles like this. It's going to make it easier. When you're building, it's good to have them on, but when they get in the way at times, you'll want to toggle it off. And that's just Command U to turn Smart Guides on, Command U to turn Smart Guides off. We'll go over here. I'm going to pull this one out and pull this ghost handle out like that. Select this anchor, adjust this Bezier curve. So you can see this isn't hard. It's just you have to zoom in enough to see it clearly and just take your time. Another thing I do is I have a preference turned on, so with when anchor points are selected, it shows me the handles, because on this, notice these angles. They're all kind of going at the same angle, and this one isn't, so I think this one could be improved if I just improve that angle and kind of match the other ones. So if you pay attention, this one could actually go out a little further like that. And that's how I would form the inner detail on the nose right here. Now, once I build it, I'll go back in and just use the eyedropper to match it with this. Actually, now that I'm looking at this, I think I'm going to adjust this curve. I'm really anal when it comes to this stuff. I think that looks better. Maybe even bring it down like that. There you go. So I tend to finesse those until they just feel right. Now, on some shapes, you don't necessarily always have to just build it raw, meaning I don't have to just grab the pen tool and just start placing an anchor point and building it like this. On some shapes, that makes sense to do it that way. But think in shape. So if we start with the elliptical shape here, I could just go like this to get most of what I need here. I might rotate it just a little bit and kind of distort this like that. That's fine. That'll give you most of this shape. Then what we can do is come down here, select this anchor point, direct select it. And then all we have to do is go to the anchor point tool. And I'm just going to bend this up. We'll select that and I'll bend this one up. And now this is considered, instead of a smooth anchor point like this one, this is now considered a corner anchor point. There's only two types of anchors. In Illustrator, you have a smooth and you have a corner. So we just turn this into a corner. So wherever it comes to a point, gets a point, then we can finesse the Bezier curve by finessing the handles like this. And then you might want to finesse this just so it looks better, matches our underlined drawing. But this is how I would approach, and it doesn't have to be a perfect circle either. That's the other thing, is it might look better if we reposition that, adjust this Bezier curve and angle, and you get the form of your tooth. Now, the more I look at this, the more I see areas that I want to improve. So like that. So start with a circle, think in shapes. It's going to help you to build your vector artwork. So let's go back to layers here. Here's I like building in pieces. So notice I built these ears separately because I'll build the rest of the head in pieces as well. So the top of the head like that, and this side here, this is where I purposely didn't want this to be connected to the top of the head shape, because I'm going to use it to edit the inner part of the ear to get this edge going right here. So this is where I'll go back to another plugin. This is a plugin by Astute Graphics called Subscribe. And Subscribe has this really great arch by points tool. And this existed for years before well, there is no feature in Illustrator. To do this in Illustrator, you just have to grab the pen tool, wherever it comes to point, gets a point, and you would start doing this. Then you go to the anchor point tool, then you grab the path, and you would do this to build it. That's fine. What I'm going to show you is using a plugin, but you can do it. You can build this in Illustrator using the pen tool and the anchor point tool, just like I built these two segments here. But I'm going to get rid of that because I want to show you a plugin, because I usually use this now instead of doing it with the two tools in Illustrator, where I'll just do this. It can form a curve. Boom. I can start here and keep moving forward with this, create that curve, go here, create this curve. I don't have to touch any Bezier curves or handles. I just click and pull, and it creates those curves for me on the fly. It just goes really fast. I really like it. Ever since I discovered this, it's been about 5 years now, I always use it to do this. And when it's an S like this, just pick one of the curves. So I'll do the one at the bottom like that. And then we'll come back and just adjust it to get this curve. And then on this one, I'll go like this. Then I can just direct select, get access to this Bezier handle, adjust that, adjust this one to get that kind of S curve. And that's how I'll create an element like this on the head. Let's go ahead and close out this shape. We'll just do something like this. We're going to combine all these, but this one, I'll make a copy, Command C, Command F, and just to make sure it's on top of the ear, we'll color it. I'll select this, and then I'll go minus front, and then that'll bring that visual curve right into the edge of his head. So that's why I did it. So I like to build in pieces. It just makes it easier. Now, of course, at some point, I can select all these elements and just unite them together into one shape. So it just is easier to focus in on one area without trying to do everything with one path. It just makes it easier. So when it's all said and done, we have all of our base shapes like this. And this is where I'll just go in and just color them just black and white to establish the base artwork you can see here. But as I was looking at this, I started thinking that this outline was okay, but I think it'd look better thicker. And so the way I do that is I'll go in, because only areas where you see an outline, the rest of his head is just a solid black. So it's just his chin and lip and his two ears. So I'm going to take a copy of this background shape. So you can see this is just black with little islands of white, whether it's his ears or the inner part of his face. And we're just going to clone this. So Command C, Command F. And then I'm going to select this shape here. This is a secondary shape. We're going to go intersect. So wherever they overlap creates a new shape. We'll go ahead and sample this blue so you can see what I'm doing. And all I'm going to do here is I'm going to develop a thicker outline by going to path. And we're going to go to offset path here. And on this one, I think I want to do it about 5. Right now it's 10. That's way too thick. So I think we want to go half that distance like that. We can preview it. That looks good. We'll click OK. We can get rid of our original shape like that. So I'll select this and I'll sample the black, copy it, and just to test it, I'll paste Command B behind. And I think that's the thickness we want. And so this is the same offset of these ear shapes, but notice how they wig out up here. And this is unfortunate because this is what Illustrator isn't smart enough to know that it's like right where it gets to this point is where these anchors are added, but instead of continuing the geometry of this curve and going like this, for whatever reason, Illustrator just goes straight. And if you ever run into this, this is one reason to use a plugin. I'm going to show you a plugin, but even with the plugin, you can't always fix this completely. You have to kind of eyeball it still. But we're going to do that. I'm only going to do one of these ears, but you'll run into this when you use offset if it's a certain angle and it has a certain degree of tangent where these two paths are going to collide. So we're going to go in here, and I'm just going to go to the scissor tool, and I'm just going to cut it. I'll turn Smart Guides on, Command U, to make sure I'm on the anchor like that. And then we can select this and just delete that. Now, part of VectorScribe is a really cool plugin called Extend Path Tool. Now, I don't use it every day or need it every day, but when I do, for stuff like this, it's awesome. So I'll just select the end, and it'll just continue that geometry the way I want it to. And so I'll bring this one all the way up here. So you can see it curves. It doesn't make it flat like Illustrator does. But notice on this one, if I follow this, it'll actually curve and start turning before it overlaps on this one, like this. So even with the plugin, it's not going to be perfect. So what I like to do is I don't want this to move. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add an anchor point right about here. Then I'm going to take this, and I'm just going to kind of come up here to cross that. We'll close this shape like that. Then I'll take this Bezier handle, and then I'll just eyeball it until I think it looks good, like something like that. And then we'll go Unite. Once we do that, we can select this shape, get rid of it. And that's how even this one, I think, could be perfected a little more. Let's go ahead and tweak this curve. Now I'm getting really picky with this, but there. I think that looks really good. So it just takes time to do the craftsmanship that's going to make it look ideal in terms of shape and form, but I think that's going to work good, and we would do the same thing. This one's a lot more wonky over on this side. But that's how I would fix it, is I'd go in and finesse those. When it's all said and done, we have all of it set up like this. I think that fatter outline makes it more bold and impactful. Now, when I'm working in a style like this, and by the way, I should point out that since the podcast talked about bat squatch, this mythology, it made me think of minor league baseball, where they have all these really cool names for these minor league baseball teams. And I thought, man, they should have a minor league baseball team in Mount St. Helens called the Bat Squatch. That'd just be cool. So that's why I picked this kind of style to work in, is that was my thinking behind it. Now, on this style, when you work in vector is a hard edge format of design and illustration. So anything that can give it more humanity and less computer-driven look, the better. Well, if we zoom in on areas, like let's zoom in on just these points where the crease in his mouth here and here, the nose, these come to dagger sharp points. Well, this is where I like to go in and add subtle rounds. So I'll just turn this on. You can see those subtle rounds happening. It just looks better. Also, if we go over here, I had originally built it, it's going like this, and then the more I looked at it, I go, this really should just contour continuation, and my graphic design teacher would be thanking me for that, because he's the one that stressed contour continuation. Your eye should go all the way down this, up here, and go right into this next curve seamlessly. This distracts it. And so those are the kind of details I tend to pay attention to, but I wasn't paying attention when I created this. And so I went back and fixed it, and we also rounded those corners, but I improved the contour continuation. Now, I had a teacher in art school called Fred Griffin that had a design code called the Griffin Design Code, and this was one of his codes from his teaching. And I've been trying to convince LinkedIn Learning to let me do a course based on his teaching. Fred passed away about 6-7 years ago, but his wife gave me permission to do a course using his content that many people over the years who went through the Seattle Art Institute learned his way of design. And I just thought that was the way design was taught. I had nothing to compare it to when I went into school, only to discover it's only unique to that school. And there's a reason why there's a lot of great designers that come out of the Seattle area, and they all use the Griffin Design Code. And I'll be honest with you, I didn't really appreciate it that much when I was in school, because I was a stupid student who, at that age, you think you know everything and you really don't. But I really came to appreciate it the more I started designing on my own. So adding subtle rounds to your artwork, whether it's in the nose area or in the teeth, you can see all the little subtle rounds we added here, really buttons up the artwork. So we want to now colorize it. The tonal family I'm using, we're going to stick with the black for the base art, but the part of Sasquatch himself is going to be gray. We're going to pick up and hint at the bat aspect with a blue type color. And of course, we need the red for the tongue and the eyes, because that's going to make it look kind of monstrous. So that's all we're going to do here is we'll go ahead and select the mouth area, and we'll color that blue. All this will be the gray. We'll select the eyes and the tongue. That's going to be this color. We'll go in here. That'll be gray as well on the inside of the mouth. So this is all the base coloring. Of course, we're going to do shading. So if I turn this on and you look over here, all we did, if I select this and we go to the transparency, you can see it's multiplied. It's 75% value, but because it's multiplied with this gray over the established base gray we have in the face, it creates a nice shading hue. We did a diminished value of the blue here. If we go on blue and let's go to color, you can see it's 75, 15, 0, but our shading value for that blue is half that value on everything, but set to multiply and adjusted opacity for the intensity of that value to create the nice shading on the blue, and the same type of approach to create the shading that's on the kind of orangish red color we're using in this design. Now, it's at this stage where I have my black and white that I printed out because I actually will start drawing on it. So this just shows how I figure out all my shading on a drawing, and then I take this, scan it back in with my flatbed scanner, and then I align it with my artwork here. So this is the same drawing. I'm going to select this. We're going to go ahead and adjust the opacity 45. I'll do the same thing as I do building the base art. I'll lock it, and then I'll build based off on top of it to create all the shapes that are going to end up being the shading. I'll select things. I'll go intersect with the Pathfinder to get the final shapes like this. We can turn off the sketch now. And now I'll take the shading that's going to be in the ears and on the face of Bat Squatch. We'll use the eyedropper, and I'll sample or color for the shading of the blue, and we'll apply it. You can see what that looks like. And that's all I'm doing to create all the detailing in this artwork. Now, this isn't the final because we also want to have some nice highlights showing up in here. So if I turn on the final Bat Squatch, this is with flat colors and with the shading. And when I turn this on, you can see all the little rim highlights that we added as well. So I think all of that works great together. Having a little hot spot on the tongue helps as well. We're not really overdoing it, but this is going to work well. Now, when I was sketching out my idea, one of the thumbnails I did was I'm thinking of the Bat Squatch like right here, and thinking mainly like the minor league baseball, like it's just Bat Squatch and it's going to arch over the top of it. So this is where I want to share how you can create kind of dimensional type. So we're going to turn on this type. I think this font is just converted to Paz from a font. I believe the name of it is Captain America. Is the name of the font. I like it because Bat Squatch is kind of a long name, so I wanted to use a condensed typeface that's more graphic, doesn't have a serif, it's sans serif, but it's going to work good for distortion. So we're going to take this, we're going to go to Object, we're going to go down to Envelope Distort, and we're going to go to the Warp features, Make with Warp, and we'll click on it. It's going to default to usually whatever you use last. We don't want arch, we want this to be arc. Not arch, but arc. We'll do that. And then we're going to adjust this. I don't want it at 50. We'll do half that. We'll go to 25. I think something like that looks good. And then we can click OK. Now, this is still our original shape. It's just applying an effect to it to bend it and distort it. So what we have to do is we have to go to Object. We have to go to Expand. And then go OK, and then that'll give us our distorted vector art that we need to use. Now, what we're going to do now is create all the effects to give it dimensionality. So the first thing we're going to do, if we go to the Appearance palette, you can see it's a group. So we're going to make sure to change this to a compound. I have that set up as a F7 key, so I can just hit this, and it changes it to a compound path. If you don't, just go to Object, Compound Path, and Make. Notice I have F7 because it's a lot faster doing it with the keyboard shortcuts. And by the way, if you're not using keyboard shortcuts, watch my video on People Love Process on keyboard shortcuts and figure out those things that you do all the time, and it'll help save you time. So what we're going to do now is we're going to offset this. So we're going to go to Path, and we're going to go to Offset Path. And I'm going to select, I want this to offset, not 5. We're going to do 7. We can preview it. That looks good. So we'll click it. And just so we can see what we're doing, we're going to go ahead and select this, go to Swatches, and we're going to color the type that color. I think that's going to look pretty good. The next thing I want to do is I want to take this, and I want to go back to Offset. And I want to offset it again, but this time not that far. We only want to do 2.5. And we can preview it. That looks good. Click OK. We're going to color this white. like that. So we have our inner original type. We have an offset of white that's right behind it. And then we have black that's behind that. So we've just kind of stack these three type of elements together. Now, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to take the black one we created. We're going to clone it, Command-C, Command-F. And this is where you want to change it to a color you're not using. We'll change it to blue in this case. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to shift it down, just hold shift to slide it straight down like this. And then we'll just scale it down. And this is going to create that distortion. We'll go ahead and cut it and paste it behind the black. This will ultimately end up being what we're going to use to create the dimension here. And this is the process where there is no absolute way to do this in Illustrator, so you have to kind of eyeball it. So what I tend to do years before there is any plugin, there's one plugin we can use on some of this, but still most of it is just doing it manually. So we'll have the smart guides on so we can snap to this anchor, snap to this anchor. So anything from here to the back is what we'll have to snap on. So from this corner to where the A is here, because that'll create the illusion, we'll go here to here like that. We'll go here, and then this one, kind of like that. Ignore the fact it's over the top. We'll get to the curves next. I'm just showing you all the straight ones. And we'll go here, like that. Some of these, we don't need to do that one. And I don't think we need to do that one. This one is barely a stair step, but we'll still do it like that. This goes here to here, and I don't think we need one for that side. This one to here. And let's go ahead and move over here. This is the unglamorous part of vector building, but this does end up looking really good. So that's most of what we're going to need. Now we do have some curves. We don't need to worry about the Q at the top because all that is so far behind you wouldn't see it anyway, so we don't need to worry about that. We don't need to worry about that. The only one we have here that's not looking so great is the B. So going from this to this. And the nice thing about this is when it offset it, put an anchor here. That might solve the problem for us. So we'll go ahead and do this. Find out where that anchor is right there. So we'll go here to there. And I think that'll give us what we need. And we'll just sample this color. Nope, you see how it's just barely, it's not the exact tangent. Okay, so I'm going to show you a plugin. It's part of Astute Graphics Vector Scribe plugin, one of the tools in it. And the reason why I use it, and just to make it clear, we'll go ahead and bring this to the front. So if you're going from this tangent of a curve to this tangent, they have a tool called, oh, I'm sorry, it's part of Subscribe, not Vector Scribe. It's here. It's called Tangent Line Tool. So you can see it goes from one curve to another curve. So you just start. You can place this anywhere. Go to the next one, and it'll detect where to place that curve. Boom. There you have it. And then all you have to do is continue building out this shape like that. Now we have it perfect. It figured out that tangent for us. So we can select this, copy it, select the black shape, paste behind like that. So all we're going to do is we're going to select everything blue. So once again, I have a keyboard shortcut because otherwise you have to go to select, same, fill color, and then if I do that, it'll select all the blue. Well, I never do that because it takes too much time. So I go here, I have an option, F1 to do the exact same thing, just so I don't have to go to that menu. Oh, we have this. We don't need that. Let's get rid of that. Okay, so if I select this, option F1, Then I'll select the black. All these are going to be fused together. So I'll go Unite now. You can see we have some of these inner details. So I'll click into this, Command A, deselect everything but the inner detail. Get rid of that. We don't need it. And if we go back, copy this, select everything, paste behind, and we color this black, the color we're using, we now have dimensional type. So that's how I'd create that. It takes a little bit, but it's not hard. It just takes time to do it well. And if maybe you might decide, well, I'd like this a little thicker. Well, that's where you can select it at this point, and you can go and put a thicker outline on it. We can go to stroke. Maybe you want it thicker, and you decide to beef that up like that. And I think that looks really good as well. Now, if you really you didn't want these little bumps in here, this is where you could expand everything, go in and clean it up so you get just one nice curve going across it. I'm not going to spend the time to do that, but there's a lot of detailing like that you can do. But I think that looks good. I just wanted to show you how to pull that off. It's not hard. It's just going to take time to just do it well. You don't want to rush it. But when it's all said and done, that's how I created this type and locked it up with my bat squatch, locked it up with other type to go with the design that matches that thumbnail. And once again, this is a personal project just because, one, I love baseball, I love minor league logos, I love mythology, and it all just kind of worked together. It's just a fun idea. And of course, I always like to work out designs like this in a one color so it works on a dark or photographic background like this. So I think it works great in one color. And because it works great in one color, I love doing t-shirts. So I have a Cotton Bureau page where all my designs are on it, and that's where I'll sell my Bat Squatch design, and I also sell Bat Squatch sticker. Now, if you get either of these two things, you're supporting this channel, and if you do, let me know, and I'll give you free access to the exercise files for this movie. I'll be honest, I love working on crazy ideas like this. It's just so enjoyable and fun. So I encourage you to act upon those moments of inspiration, play with them, try to create something from it, and see where it takes you, because it's worth the investment of your time to flex your creative muscle in new ways and grow your skills. Remember, the exercise files for each of my People of Process movies can always be accessed via a link in the description below. A big thank you to those who have, and to those who have also become members as well. You help me to continue making content for this channel, and I really do appreciate your support. Until next time, thank you for watching People of Process. And as always, I hope this content helps you to improve your own creative process.